There was a lot of crazy shit that just went down in this episode, so I'm not even going to waste any time in this intro. Let's jump right in. So after Boyd climbs out of the well, the old mystery man whose name is Martin asked Boyd to kill him. He tells Boyd that they had a deal, which was if he helps Boyd out of the well, then Boyd would have to help him in return. But of course, Boyd wasn't aware that the deal was to kill this fool when he blindly agreed. Also, here's a quick correction. So last episode I said that old man Martin mentioned how Boyd's gun looks different from the ones he remembers. But he actually doesn't say that. He actually asked Boyd if he was holding a gun because his eyes aren't what they used to be. But my theory for time travel is still valid after we see Boyd make it out, but of course we'll get to that later. And back to the recap. So here's where things start to become even weirder. Boyd asked old man Martin who did this to him, but he ignores the question and asked Boyd if he was from the town. Boyd was puzzled by this question because of course we've never seen this man in town before and have no clue who he is. So how could he even know about the town? Which I think it's safe to assume that question is one of several that's going through Boyd's mind in this moment. And of course I'm just throwing out this question from the perspective of Boyd, but we all the viewers can assume that this guy was from the town at some point in time, just like everyone else. Also during this time, Boyd takes a look around and sees two other victims chained to the wall, except they've been there so long, they are just skeletons now. And the old man tells Boyd that he thought the town was the worst part until he went through the tree. He asks Boyd if he also went inside the tree and proceeds to explain to him the nature of the trees and how you can basically end up anywhere, stuck or just trapped, and that's how they get you. But he doesn't tell Boyd who they are, and I personally doubt that he's talking about the monsters, but maybe he is. Also, this is the first time we've ever had someone explain to Boyd how the trees work. He just went through them and ended up there, so he kind of has some sort of notion about how they work now. After Boyd looks around to secure the area, he tries to unchain and help old man Martin. At the same time, Martin reveals to Boyd that he's been trapped down there for years, and it's been so long now that he's lost count. And he also finds out that Martin was a Marine, just like Abby was. Martin begs Boyd to kill him, but Boyd refuses to leave him behind. And before we go to the next scene, I know some people have a theory that this is Victor, but I don't think so. Even though it might seem obvious that it isn't him because this guy's name isn't Victor, but even before we knew this guy's name, I thought about this possibility, but there's just not enough evidence for me to feel that way. Now, I do think Victor might actually know this man simply because he's been there so long, but at the same time, you know, all of this that happened to Martin could have happened before even Victor got there, so who knows. But outside of that, I think old man Martin's only significance is the thing that he does later in this episode to Boyd, and of course we'll get to that later. Also, I wanted to point out the inconsistency from episode 1 where old man Martin throws down the rope to Boyd while he's chained to the wall. That was one that a lot of you guys pointed out in the comments and wanted to discuss. So let's talk about it. I personally just justified that to myself by saying maybe he clenched the rope nice and tightly between his toes while it was laying at his feet and perfectly did a flip kick to toss the rope down the well with perfect accuracy. Yes, From does some questionable things sometimes and shit just doesn't always add up, but hey, this is my favorite show right now and I'ma stick beside him.
This is your man.
Yes,
Look at the screen.
that's mine. And
And
I'm gonna stick beside him.
that's what you're going to settle for.
I'm gonna stick beside him.
Then we jump back to the diner where we see that Donna and Kenny have gotten everyone inside safely. Donna reveals to the passengers that she knows about the tree in the road, and then she proceeds to give them the rundown on the town once again since she has their attention now with the help of a big ass shotgun in her hand, because a big ass shotgun always helps. Everyone knows that. During this time, we cut over to Victor and Tabitha as they decide to hide out for the night in one of Victor's hiding spots. But since it doesn't have a talisman, they still need to stay quiet. Back at the diner, Marielle reveals to us that it's been 6 months since her and Christy have seen each other, and how they were supposed to meet for lunch the day Christy went missing. She eventually tries to leave, but Christy talks her into staying and tells her about the town. Over at the Matthews house, underneath the rubble, the new guy Brick from the bus finally wakes up and starts bitching, like a lot of you all guessed, and Jim and Tom struggle to keep him quiet. Also, his parents may have cursed him with that name since he was crushed by bricks, and yeah, that's a joke. Back in the sex dungeon, Boyd searches for something to free Martin from the chains, and he finds a big heavy rock. At this time, they both suddenly hear the music box and Martin tells Boyd that they are coming. He tells him that there's nightmares and darkness in the forest, and he needs to escape before the music stops. Then we cut to Julie peeking through the blinds at the diner looking over at her house. but Kenny tells her to stop looking or she might draw attention to Jim and the others. Then he tries to find a way to distract her by asking her what's her favorite book, which she never answers the question. Over by the kitchen, we see Donna suspiciously watching Randall while it looks like he's plotting some shit. Then we cut to the bar for a brief second where we see an ignorant couple wandering inside. I wonder how this is going to turn out. And then at the post office, we see Fatima and Ellis calling out to try to save the idiots who ran off earlier. But of course, their stupidity isn't their fault, and they continue to stay hidden. Later, we can hear them yelling outside in pain as the monsters play Fruit Ninja with their bodies, and in this moment, Fatima loses it because she failed to save them. Then she goes back to the door to trash talk the monsters as they just smile back, and they tell her in the most sincere way that she'll feel better if she just comes outside. And you must admit that the monsters are quite charming when they want to be. Over at the Matthews rubble, the new guy continues to lose it and starts coughing up blood, and we know someone's definitely going to die. Over at the diner, Randall, who's not much of an asshole but still an asshole, wants to go save Jim and the others since they have guns. And of course Donna says no, but suddenly everyone becomes distracted by a scream outside, and Randall uses this moment to grab Kenny's gun and takes him as a hostage. Randall believes that they are all behind the tree and everything else that's happening throughout the town. Then suddenly one of the creatures knock at the diner door and this distracts Randall. Kenny takes his gun back and him and Donna are able to regain control. Then we jump back to Boyd, who's still trying to free Martin, and then Martin asks Boyd if he ever wonders if Abby was right about it all being just a dream. And Boyd just looks back at him like, how in the heck? And suddenly the music stops and Martin tells Boyd that they are out of time. Then Martin cuts Boyd and presses his wound against Boyd's cut and tells him his blood is Boyd's blood now, and then he drops dead. Boyd stumbles around after this, grabs a torch and finds a door. He walks through the door and magically he's back in the woods. We see the building that he was inside of is no longer there, and instead it looks like an old fallen down structure of that building is behind him. Then our favorite wild dog shows up to lead Boyd back to town. This is technically the second time one of the dogs have helped Boyd. The first time it basically led him to the talismans. I think the dogs are good. Even when they barked at Tabitha and Jim, I think the dogs were trying to keep them from going too deep into the woods, but that's my theory on them. The wild dogs have been around since Victor was a kid, and since we know time travel exists in this place now, it could be the same dog traveling through time or something. And also, Boyd definitely traveled through time to the past. What this means, of course, I have no idea. Back at the diner, Kenny confirms with Christy that that is indeed her fiance, and shit becomes even more awkward between them. Over at the bar, the idiot couple opens the door for some monsters who are begging to get in. Then outside the diner, we see good old grinning Gary approaching the charter bus, and he seems to have an interesting fascination with the bus. Now, of course, he eventually discovers the old couple at the back and he plays jump rope with their intestines. We already knew about that from the trailers, but the interesting part here is how he's so fascinated with the bus and playing with the controls inside, almost like it's a new toy or something. It kind of makes me revisit my theory even more about their interest in humans and just wanting to learn more about them, but I think that's just something to keep in mind. Then we cut back to the woods to see that Boyd is still following the dog, but then he crosses paths with the monsters. He quickly puts out the torch and hides behind a tree. As the monsters approach, we see that it's Milkman Marcus and the Funky Bunch, and the most unfortunate, annoying shit starts to happen in this moment, and it's the fact that Boyd's vision starts acting up. He's unable to see clearly for a second as the monsters are basically all around him. I'm sure it was the infectious parasites that Martin gave him that caused this to happen, but I mean, that's gotta be the worst luck. And of course he makes it out unharmed though, but still. Over in the truck with Tabitha and Victor, Tabitha asked Victor about the boy in white, and he basically tells her that the boy is an old friend who's been away for a while and now he's back. Victor reveals to Tabitha that he came to the town with his mom, and how some of his things used to belong to her. At this time, Victor and Tabitha begin to hear noises outside the truck, and luckily it's Boyd. But from a distance, we see Elgin running and screaming for help from the monsters, and he jumps in the truck with Boyd, Victor, and Tabitha, and since Boyd doesn't know anything about the new busload of people, he decides to keep a close eye on Elgin until he knows more. Back in town underneath the Matthews rubble, poor Brick suddenly starts coughing up blood and just dies on us. And then almost immediately afterwards, we lose Tom. Damn it, I actually like Tom. And the way that thing was just sitting up there in the top of the roof, it caught me by surprise when I was watching the screener. It actually was a very shocking moment to see it just pounce on his ass like that. And no, Tom was not a mole. He was just chill about being in the town because he lost his will to want to escape. He basically just accepted his life there long ago, which is crazy, but it's true. Now, there is a chance that at the end of this series, it's revealed that no one ever really died, and it all was just a huge simulation. But I'm good on that ending, because I need a conclusion that matches the originality of this show, so fingers crossed we don't just get some quick explanation like that, because that. Over at the diner, everyone can hear Tom's final screams, and Julie tries to run outside to eagerly die alongside her father, but luckily Donna is able to keep her inside, cause let's be real, that's exactly what would have happened to her if she would have gone out there. Back at the truck with Tabitha and Elgin, Boyd asked Victor about his drawing, and we see that he drew the ventriloquist dummy from season 2 episode 1. I gotta say it like that because these videos will age, and this is just for the record. Victor reveals that he draws pictures to remember things he's seen. Soon after this moment, we can see that it's morning now. Julie jumps up and runs out of the diner to the Matthews house rubble. We see Tom's corpse laid out on the ground, poor Tom, but everyone finds out that Jim survived and runs over to get him out. Bacta sees all this commotion and she's like whatever and goes to check out the bus instead. And she has a nice pleasant surprise from grinning Gary spread out across the bus seats and down the walkway waiting for her. Then we jump back to Boyd and the others leaving the truck. Tabitha runs off to town after Elgin tells her their house collapsed. Afterwards, Boyd's arm parasites start tripping out and showing off, and it looks like Victor also noticed Boyd's arm as well. And then the episode ends with a shot of Boyd, Elgin, and Victor heading back to town. So what in the hell do you guys think Old Man Martin infected Boyd with? And if you notice, as soon as he gave it to Boyd, he died, but before that, he was alive in there for years. This is probably why he wanted Boyd to shoot him, so he wouldn't have to transfer the parasites to Boyd to kill himself. Also, what do you guys think about the faraway trees that allow you to travel through time? And this new element being added to the show that we weren't aware of. We also got a little more backstory on Victor, but there's a lot more on the way this season for him. And how do you guys feel about losing Tom? Bartender Tom. Was it a surprise or nah? Definitely the biggest death in the show since Father Khatri, in my personal opinion. But as always, let's chop it up down in the comments below, and thank you guys for watching.